by CariGenetics. And as you may know, CariGenetics is a local brand company that is focused on expanding our genetic sequencing capacity in Bermuda and throughout the Caribbean. And I'm very excited to have Professor Zodwa Dlamini, yes, perfect, all the way from South Africa. She flew over here to talk to us about how we can exploit global networks for the fight against cancer. This is something that I'm really excited to partner with her on at her Pan-African Cancer Research Institute. And here we go. Let's dig in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wellman, and thank you to everyone for coming to listen to my lecture this evening. So I'm going to share my presentation, which is on exploiting global networks for the fight against cancer. So I'll start with an overview where I'll just the global strategy that we need to embark on, and also a little bit about the partnership for PACRI, which is Pan-African Cancer Research Institute, and CariGenetics, which is a partnership for success and a way forward. Cancer rates continue to increase worldwide, and it now is the second leading cause of death globally, that is after heart disease. With approximately 70% of cancer patients dying in low-middle-income countries. And this also is now emerging as a public health problem in sub-Saharan Africa. And I've been told also here in Bermuda it's really growing. That's why the interest. When we look at statistics, for instance, there we have the low middle income countries. Look at on the left, the blue lines, they mean the incident of the incident rate of getting cancer. And then on the right, the red one, it's the mortality. If you can just look and see that, for instance, we have almost up to just above 250 with, was it Uruguay? Yes. And the mortality rate there, it looks a little bit shorter, but just before 150. Yes, and then look at the high income countries, you can see the difference. Although they have high rates of cancer, but the death rates or dying from cancer is a bit lower than in low middle income countries. So this also is just a summary showing that in low middle income countries you have almost the same rate of getting cancer. Okay, no, you have in high income countries you have a bigger rate than in low income countries, but look at the average, we almost die equally, although the high income countries get it more often. So also here we are showing the statistics as well, again in the global map. So here, if you can just check those first world countries, the darker means much more rates of getting cancer, and that is the that is the US, and down there you have Australia and also Europe. They are very dark, which means they get cancer much more often. So, but if you go to the mortality rates now, look how more often people die. It's becoming lighter now in the first world countries. Look at Australia, it was dark, but now look at Africa. It's becoming darker, and also there, I think in Asia, it's becoming really darker. So you saw the two maps. In the high-income countries, people getting more cancer than in low-income countries or underserved populations. But in underserved population, they then die much more than in high-income countries. But now, even if you look at the high-income countries, those red bars which depict high death rates, but they sort of shorter, but they would be much more shorter if there was no inequities. Still, in the US, for instance, you have, which is a high-income countries, but there is health disparities or inequalities that exist. You don't get the same level of care. So even the early detection, the screening, also to be involved in clinical trials is not as much as it is with the Europeans, for instance. There is not enough education as is with the people who are well off, or who are not like people who are from underserved population. They don't get much education. Well, it's on TV, but they prefer you to be around them in order for them to really be educated. So communities preferring taking advice from their members rather than strangers, because you much more believe when a person you know tells you rather than a person comes from elsewhere. So what are the challenges in low-income countries? There is lack of awareness, although it's more than where we have, for instance, blacks or minorities in high-income countries also having lack of awareness, but it's much more because we have more rural areas or far-flung areas. So also lack of education programs. Also the culture plays a huge role. For instance, in prostate cancer, where I come from, for instance, men are not very comfortable to be touched by women. So unfortunately, we have nurses who are women, and they very few who are men. So that also, so a man would rather die than being touched by a woman. So culture plays a huge role also. There is also lack of involvement in clinical trials. Those small clinical trials where pharma maybe want to see how the drug is going to work, but they just talk to those clinicians to run those, not the clinical trials on large scale. So also just precise or targeted therapy is just a dream, because remember, when you are a minority or black, there is also genetics involved. So if the drugs were tested on European counterpart, it doesn't necessarily mean that they work on us. So it's not a one size fits all. You see? So that is why we need to be able to have our genetic databases, which now is our responsibility, so that they are out there, so that we also can get precise medicine which is targeted to our cancers. I've said a bit about genetics, so the genetic diversity plays a role. So for instance, I'll make an example. In black males, for instance, when they get prostate cancer, mostly is very so it's very aggressive than in white males. So tell me what makes that? Not because your skin is black, but it is the diversity of the genetics within us. So you need a different care. So that is why you need to get and dig deeper into genetics. For instance, the blacks get more aggressive breast cancer than whites, and also triple negative breast cancer is not as prevalent as in blacks. So even when they're thinking of going into Africa for clinical trials for triple negative breast cancer, because of the lack of patients or not enough patients to run clinical trials, for instance, in the US. Also, there is really minimal close collaboration of clinicians with basic scientists. You know, when you are going to fight cancer, you need all the basic scientists, you need all the clinicians, but they need to work together and form and forge a collaboration. But this is not really a problem of low-middle income countries. I remember I was in the US, I think it was Cornell Medicine, and I was telling them that this is a problem which we encountered. It was a huge problem, but I've tried to put these clinicians and basic scientists together at the Pan-African Cancer Research Institute. They say even for the US, even for high-income countries, it's just like that. You know, it's not just a problem of the low-income countries. So we really need a global strategy to fight cancer. That's why I'm here, because we need to work together to fight this cancer or transform the fight against cancer. So we need to understand cancer in the context of the African or Bermudian human genome in order for us to succeed and be able to create precision diagnostic tools within our context. So because even for diagnostics, the panels that you might be testing or you're gonna test cancer, did you ever ask yourself where they came from? They're not representative of you. Or so if they test, it might come out negative, not because you don't have cancer, but because there isn't anything to match, because it was not created from your genetic. So we really need to transform the cancer narrative. So in the global strategy for the fight against cancer, what is very interesting and which is, I think is good, is that there are skills, but they are all concentrated in high-income countries. Also, the funding is concentrated there for clinical trials because they have big pharma there and everything. But what is good about this is that they are very much interested in working with low-middle income countries. But then they should build capacity in those countries so that we don't always have to go there and ask for help. I mean, it's a long way to fly from Africa to the US or to Europe, and not everybody will have money for that. You see, even for here is an hour and something, but not everybody can afford that. So low-middle income countries, scientists need to be involved. So with the interest of the incoming high-income countries, because also they're gonna benefit. when they work on our genetics with us, the drugs that are gonna come out, they're gonna sort of benefit everybody, even the farmer, their farmer. So we benefit and they benefit. So we have to be able also to be in the driving seat and not sit, because the person is saying, I'm coming with money, and say, okay, what do you need us to do for you? Must we ship the blood? It must be done here. So you need to know how, so that we take it forward. So also that will help alleviate exploitation in clinical trials and lack of trust, because you have your scientists there in the ground working. Well, it's good to share expertise, because anyway, I want to tell you the truth, we wouldn't be able to move forward. We need, even when we go overseas to go and get those cutting edge skills, but we need to bring them back. So if they come with the money and their skills also, we need to work together and also have similar goals where we want to go to. So the partnership of PACRI, or the Pan-African Cancer Research Institute, and CariGenetics is just for defeating cancer together. Not that the two sort of entities will work alone, you see, but we will have to start somewhere and implement the global strategy of fighting cancer. And also as well as health disparities or inequities in cancer care or health care. So we have to build our own genetic databases, like the African or Bermudan Cancer Genome Atlas, ACGA or BCGA. That is actually something that it's a database of all your genetics for cancer, so that we are able to be treated according to our genetics. So that is very, very important. At the moment, we are not represented. It's European, so even Dr. Weldon, when you say we have the panel, that panel, where did it come from? Huh?
Europe.
We must do our own custom-made panels with our genes. Okay? So now I'm here, so I have to talk a little bit about PACRI, which is the Pan-African Cancer Research Institute. The vision is quite long, but I read it so that you also know why CariGenetics has to work with us. We aspire to be a world-class Pan-African Cancer Research Institute dedicated to pushing the boundaries of precision oncology or precise oncology or targeted oncology, cancer prevention, and bringing new approaches for early diagnosis and novel therapeutics agent to improve health outcomes, reduce health inequalities, strengthen health system in underserved and socio-economically disadvantaged communities. I know that Bermuda you might not fall within those socio-economically disadvantaged communities. I've been told that people who are in this island are very rich, but genetically, I think there is some similarity somehow. So we already have a team of experts in cutting-edge cancer research. Those we've partnered with overseas experts from the US, from the UK, from Europe, from Australia mainly. There are other countries. So we have, these provide scientific advice, and most of them, they even co-supervise our postgraduate students and also projects. There is a provision of cutting-edge expertise in cancer research So the provision of cutting-edge expertise in cancer research is very limited in South Africa and Africa. We do have a little bit, but not as much. So we don't bring the people because we can't afford to bring them to Africa. But we work, they do come maybe once or twice a year, not all, some of them. But also they are available online for constant contact. So, and this collaboration or partnership is premised on close collaboration between clinicians and basic scientists. We are starting now to be able to have staff-student exchange, and we are starting also to apply for funding so that we are able to have that sort of others researchers going to overseas to gain skills and coming back, and also even those who have the cutting edge skills, they also need to come, because also we have cohort of patients that they don't have, that they're gonna have to benefit from by being here and do research with us and see how we do research where we are. So the PACRI has got 3 macro areas: the clinical cancer research, which is the clinical trials fall under that, and which is about actually pushing the envelope of early detection and treatment as well as personalized care. We also have the translational cancer research, which is actually closer to building, for instance, the genetic databases, which is facilitating the movement of new ideas and treatments from the laboratory to the clinic, as well as the movement of clinical observation from the clinic to the laboratory. So it's important. This is why we have to have this collaboration of clinicians and scientists, because as the clinicians are busy with patients, then they discover some things that they cannot understand, and they need the basic scientists in order for them to understand and also work at a laboratory level to translate it to the clinic. So we have also the prevention and population cancer science, which this lecture is falling under, which includes awareness and education. So we have at PACRI an international scientific advisory committee. All those experts, they sort of part of the our international scientific advisory committee, which is good because you can collaborate with others to add into the pool, but we already have most of what we need in this partnership. So we already have 4 main international working committees according to the cancers, which we have breast cancer, which is the most prevalent in South Africa, and then followed by colorectal cancer, and then prostate cancer, and then cervical cancer. But I thought when we were talking with Dr. Walden, it was like we're gonna start with breast and prostate, because I think those are the we'll see. Sometimes it's difficult to know because I don't know which is the most prevalent here, you see, but I know people have been telling me about prostate, but I've been talking to more men than women, so I wouldn't know. So this partnership success to transform the cancer is also to have joint fundraising, because funding is the main driver. I mean, working in this kind of research is now cheap. So it's quite, sequencing is extremely expensive, but you need to put money in order to go somewhere. There's already a pool of experts, like I have explained. We already, University of Pretoria actually is where the main PACRI is situated, but we now have two more big universities which have satellites which work together, collaborate very well everywhere. When you get there, it's like home of PACRI. So even here, I'm hoping it's going to be. We have industry partners as well, and also for clinical trials, we have them from the US, for instance, partners which we're going to be starting clinical trials with. And also our collaboration, just working together, makes people, the funders, be interested in funding such partnership rather than funding individuals, because they know more can come out of this. Okay, also we have, it's a must that we must build the African and the Bermudan cancer genome atlases. We already started to talk to the Indian professors that are involved in building their own, so we won't be starting from nowhere because we get their expertise. They are willing to help us start this, which is really a susceptibility databases where you can be able to see how susceptible is this population to these cancers. And that will help us really advance precise or targeted oncology. Now I have to just go back home and tell you that organizing an international congress which starts on the 26th, two pre-workshops and until the 1st of March. So Dr. Weldon, there is the, you can click on there and then you get it. It's very cheap to also register, and you need to then listen. You can attend rather. You don't need to go there. There is a whole lot of international partners which are coming. I'm gonna share with you as soon as we have everything in the program, but we're just finalizing, and then you can. But if you click on there, you'll be able to click on the program. You'll be able to click on also on registration. It's quite cheap. We use rands which are very weaker than the dollar. So I would like to acknowledge and thank Dr. the CEO of CariGenetics, also the Bermuda College to host me, and the University of Pretoria for making an effort to really fight cancer by getting me to University of Pretoria. The South African Medical Research Council is one of the funding organization for PACRI, and which made things happen, and they still funding also the National Research Foundation. The South African Medical Research Foundation is funded by the Department of Health, while the National Research Foundation is funded by the Department of Science and Innovation. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if there are questions or is it allowed?
Questions and answers, Craig? Don't be shy.
I have a question. So we're talking about the genetic differences between blacks and whites. and medicine and research has been targeted towards the white European population. So far, have you done any, I'm assuming you have done research so far that shows the differences between the genetic makeups where it's relevant to cancer between the black population and the white population? Or is that work still to be done?
Yeah, although we are not yet there, because that is what we intend to do.
Okay.
Because it's difficult also if you are not even on a genetic database, even for normal, so your reference is a white person, so it's difficult. There are fewer studies that are showing now that there is some difference, but not enough, because you must compare apples with apples.
Yeah.
So you just taking the genome and you comparing with this genome, which is quite different sometimes. So that is why we need to do this. Something like in Africa is new, cutting edge research is done. Also, you have to go there. When you come back, there is no infrastructure.
Yeah.
We just finish our labs, state of the art laboratories, which I'm very thankful for the University of Pretoria, because that is also the problem. You need laboratories, state of the art, to be able to do that. Well, they're not equipped at the moment. There is less equipment. We hope in 2 years or so we will be fully equipped. So, but we have the space. That's what is important. Even the companies, some of them, they can perhaps loan us some equipment, and if it works, they might just give it to us. But they can't loan you equipment if you have no space.
Yeah.
If I can add to that as well. So there was a study in 2018 that was done, published, came out that year. That was, I think, just under 1,000 people of African descent in Africa, North America, and South America. And essentially what they did was they created a reference genome from scratch. So imagine we were back in like the early 2000s where they made the first reference genome, which was more Eurocentric. They did the same thing. And what they actually found is that there was 10% more genetic material in those of African descent versus the original reference. Now that might not sound like a lot, but in the original reference, there was 3 billion bases or building blocks. So that's 300 million more data points in those of African descent that was missing from the current reference. So we are definitely different genetically by a long shot. And so, yeah, to speak to Professor Zodwa has just said, we have to compare apples with apples.
So other than funding, what are some of the challenges in terms of getting the samples, if you will, or for persons to be involved in trials?
Well, where I come from, there are very few, if any, opportunities to be even involved in clinical trials. But in countries like the US, also there is lack of, also as one part of the challenge, there is lack of trust. If anyone knows the Tuskegee trial, so that is why people more often, like I talked to one professor, actually is from Tuskegee. He says now they do come to clinical trials and be involved because he's from there and he's like them, you see. So they understand, they have the trust, you see. That is the real problem. But with us, I cannot even say people have no trust because there is no, there is no clinical trials that you hear like in the US is written in buses that if you come and do clinical trials, you get this or something like that. There isn't any opportunity for that. There is no screening, like cancer screening. Only the people who have the medical insurance, which is very expensive, who are well off, can go and do like breast cancer screening every year. But for most people, I think maybe those are few, maybe 80% or 90%, they don't have that luxury of going there. So we need to increase that, and I guess even the political will to assist in that area so that we can be able to even screen at the far flung in the clinics where it's very far from everything, and have those cheaper point of care diagnostics. If we have our reference genome, then we're able to have those where a person can prick or use if there's something and be able to see from far that something is wrong, so I need to but you can't do it without the research.
Can you elaborate on the Tuskegee trials, please?
You can.
Okay, just to give some context. So in Tuskegee, which is in the States, they were actually telling them that they were giving them a medicine, but they were giving them a disease. If I remember correctly, it was syphilis? Yeah, so they were lying, essentially, to them and injecting black males with syphilis, and so they found out afterwards. So obviously, something like that, you're not going to trust people doing clinical trials again, right? And then beyond that, you have the story of Henrietta Lacks, which I think Oprah done a movie on more recently, where you had a black African-American woman that had cervical cancer, went for a biopsy, she ended up passing away. Her cells from her biopsy were very interesting because they never died. And that scientist went and sold them and started the biomedical science industry without her consent or her family's consent. And the entire industry is based off of that finding. And I myself was using them in my PhD. I didn't know what they were until I looked it up. You can just buy them, even to today. They have been to the moon and back, literally, and have helped to create most of the drugs. I mean, trillions upon trillions of dollars have been made off of these cells, and the family hasn't made anything. So we have these types of stories, and that's just two. There is another kind of story of what happened actually in Nigeria, where there was like a meningitis outbreak, and this wasn't that long ago. This was in the late 90s. And a company, Pfizer actually, they showed up, and you had your NGOs that were coming to help, and Pfizer thought, okay, we have a drug that's for meningitis. This is great. We have like a phase 3 clinical trial we can do, and didn't get informed consent. And we're again giving these people that were actually sick this drug that hadn't been tested properly. And they had to settle in 2009. So these are the types of things that have happened that we don't have trust. So we have to build that, but we can only do that if we empower ourselves, in this case Bermudians, to do the research, because we have our own interests at heart.
But now also we mustn't scare everybody. We have now very good regulatory authority. You cannot just do any trial, and you even need the patient to consent that this and it's for this only, or if you are happy you can say even for other studies. So it's up to you, but no one is gonna come and give you syphilis. If I can add that, they would draw blood when they're doing their clinical trials. You don't know, they say they are taking the bad blood from you, but they, so.
Here's another question. What can Bermudians do to show our interest in doing our own research? Like, what can we do in our part, like, to help with the situation and go forward?
That's a great question. So the first thing I would say is that we all just did it for about 3 years and counting with the pandemic we just went through. We all became scientists. It was great to see. So researching, just obviously verifying what you're reading, not just everything you see, but digging deeper into what you're hearing, because education is a big part of it, right? There's only so much that I can do that other scientists like Professor Zodwa can do. We can talk like this at you as much as we can, but you have to take an interest. And in your free time, you have to look things. When you go on Facebook and you see your friend went to the beach and you're excited, that's great. Spend some time also reading about what's the latest in cancer research, if that's your interest, right? So educating yourself, having the conversation as well. So everyone that's here tonight, I'm officially knighting you and daming you as scientists. So now you can go and preach the message as well that we need to empower our own people. It's not going to happen overnight, but we have to do our own, take it on ourselves, empower ourselves, and then pass it on. So it is for you to get involved, 100%. Yeah, you're in real work.
Screening. Because if you catch cancer early, then the possibility of even getting cured is quite high. But if you're sitting and not knowing that I don't want to find out, then cancer will find you before you can even find it. It's very important to screen and even tell your friends that I'm screening for prostate cancer. As soon as you are 40, start. Yes.
Any other
I
questions?
don't want to take up the room, but for PACRI working partnerships, are there any other African countries that have joined yet, or are you still working on building these partnerships?
Because it's a new, actually it was launched a year ago this time,
Oh, I see.
February,
Okay.
but we already working with Botswana. In the conference we have a university from Nigeria, we have a professor coming, which we will be working with him as well. We were going to start working with him, but things were very slow because he was sending somebody to work with us, but now have to be pushed by the US, but we're gonna be working together. We wanted first to create the foundation, because if we don't have the foundation, we will just fly to, and then when they come, there's nothing. So it's better you build, and then you can, because when a person comes, then there is infrastructure and everything that is there. Yes.
And I can say on the Caribbean side, we have Jamaica and Bahamas already forming our own Caribbean working partnership on breast cancer. So we just launched, last year, but we're also building. So we will have that connection across the Atlantic. Yes.
Quick question. So, how does someone get their name in the databases that you're trying to build? The African one and the Bermuda one. What does one have to do?
I can say it from Bermuda side.
Say it from Bermuda side.
Yeah, so Bermuda side, keep an eye out. We will be launching the first human research study soon. And so there will be a way you can go on our website and show interest, and then we will have you in our calling list. And then we will reach out, and we have to actually bring you in. There has to be a dialogue, because this is not a small thing you're undertaking. So there's a conversation to make sure you fully understand what you're getting into, and then you can enter our database. So keep your eyes peeled. There will be more to come.
Yeah, in South Africa and Africa, I think there have been sequence, but not for diseases, like normal. But now, that's why we have to have, in other countries, they have cancer databases, so that they know this type of cancer is like this. Okay, it would be better or benefit from being treated with this kind of drug. That's what we lack. So, but when that time comes, actually, we will have to sequence from patients, and don't just have to it's like a study which you have to really write, and it must be approved by the ethics committee, and also it must also be consented by the patient, because you have to explain this is the study that will help. It might not even sometimes help you, but other people or even your relatives in the future, you have to explain. And it's the right of the patient to say, no, I don't want you to sequence me. So those are the things, but they are communicated, but normally with your sequencing the patient, you'll have to talk to the patient in the hospital or those hospitals. And if it's children, for instance, they have to, the parents, there are guidelines. They have to, the parents have to consent if it's a minor.
I think I saw another hand over here.
Will your research remain solely focused on cancer, or do you intend to start with cancer and then move on to other diseases in the future, or what's the intention?
It's a cancer research institute,
Okay.
and cancer is big. There are more than 200 cancers that you can have, so it's even difficult to just deal with those. There are other experts who are working on other diseases, but this
Just
we're
pure
not
cancer.
planning to, because I showed you 4 which we have there are many, but it's according to the cancer rates, how often this cancer attacks our population there. But otherwise it's just the Cancer Research Institute.
Okay.
There are other people who are working on diabetes. There are other, I have a project which I'm collaborating on of people sometimes they can have cancer and diabetes. So we want to see the genetic map of what happens in those, because it looks like there is a relationship, but not because we're working on diabetes, because of the link between the two.
For CariGenetics, we will be doing what is focused on Bermuda. So yes, we have a lot of cancer, and that's why we're partnering with PACRI on cancer research, but we also have chronic kidney disease, we have diabetes, we have obesity, we have Alzheimer's, there's so many I can name. So we will be working with the strategic partners on those other diseases. So we're focused on initially Bermuda, and then as we expand into the Caribbean, whatever is needed for those Caribbean countries, we focus on. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, in Bermuda, I understand we have some sort of, to the hospital, some sort of cancer or tumor database. Is that just a list of people who had cancer, or is there any underlying genetic material associated with that?
That is a great question. We do have a tumor registry that is held by the hospital. I haven't seen it, but I do know that it has no genetics at all. I know when it comes to our cancer risk assessment clinic at the Bermuda Cancer and Health Center, they do it for breast cancer, and that will get sent away. But that information is held with that one institute. But we don't have a publicly accessible registry, not with names, but just this cancer has this rate of mutation in this gene, doesn't exist. And that's why we were actually awarded a Bermuda Health Council Innovation Fund grant to actually do that. So that is what we're starting with, to actually have it public, so that not only can the Cancer and Health Center, but the hospital, the Ministry of Health, the insurance companies who are funding it, so everyone knows like what on earth is happening, because the treatments are based off of the mutations that are in the cancers. So if we know that our cancers in Bermuda are particularly one type of mutation in, say, in breast cancer, then that's the drug that we need on island, right, in order to target that. So that's where we're going with this. So hopefully, a year from now, we can say yes, we do have that. But that is one of our goals this year, is to start that. Another question? Go ahead.
No.
So the target of precise medicine for cancer treatment, is that something that's just generally still in its early stages, or is it more developed for the white community but not the black community? What's the general position of that currently?
Yeah, but the precision medicine or precise, of course, because the genetics which are out there or the databases are for Europeans, you know, the blood or whatever was taken from European. So then for you to get a precise or targeted therapy is difficult, because it might, we do at the moment, it's a one size fit all. Whatever they treat, they think maybe this is gonna work, and after some time, if you're lucky, it works, or it doesn't work, and then they say, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. Yeah.
So precision medicine is different from individualized treatment, correct? Genetic level.
They're the same. So to answer your question, in Europe, it is very far advanced. I mean, I think last month there was a story of a young girl in England that had a precise therapy against her cancer design, and she was cured based on her genetics. Her personal genetics, but based off of knowing, you know, the references was related to her as well, and then was able to tweak it to what she had. So we're getting there. We are there. It's just not for everyone. Europeans make up 15% of the world population, so the other 85% of us are just kind of like here, seeing it happen and reading about it, but not actually being a part of it. So we're trying to fix that.
And no one is gonna fix it.
No one's gonna come and fix it. Yeah, we have to do it ourselves. Okay, I think that would be the last question. Thank you very much for everyone for coming. And I want to thank Professor Dlamini for coming all the way from